All right, everybody, welcome back into the Auburn Live Basketball Show. JHead, what's happening, man? What's new?
Living the dream, brother. Here with you and Big Zach in the back, getting ready to talk about one of my favorite things on the planet right now, and that's Auburn basketball, especially coming off two impressive wins against Texas A&M, as well as obviously this last game against LSU. So just ready to hear what you think, Justin.
Man, where would we be without Auburn basketball? Like over the last 6, well, now we're into 7 seasons. This entire stretch, just everything with Auburn is involved with is football, right? Everybody loves football. And you've got the 17 season for football.
Yes.
And that's really it. It's really all you got. And in that same time span is when basketball under Bruce Pearl is completely taken off, and you've got 2 regular season championships, a conference tournament championship, a Final Four run, a number 1 ranking, all that good stuff. So basketball continues to be the saving grace while football tries to find its footing. Let's just say that. All right, before we get in, a couple of sponsors I want to shout out. First Session Cocktail, our main sponsor. Go check them out if you're in downtown Auburn, right there on Magnolia, right next to Taco Mama. Awesome people at Session. Great drinks, great atmosphere, booth seating and bar seating. It's not a place you got to sit and wait. So they make a lot of good cocktails. And they sponsor the basketball show and the football show. So make sure and go check them out. Great place to go if you're in town before a basketball game. Go have a drink there, and then you can pop over to the arena and go watch the game. That's a good idea too. So if you go, tell them that we sent you. Tell them that the people at Auburn Live sent you there, and they'll appreciate that. Go check out Session Cocktail. The other sponsor, GameTime.co. Make sure to go check them out. They're a sponsor of not only us, but On3 as a whole. Go check out GameTime.co. Last-minute tickets for not only sporting events, concerts, and comedy shows, and all that kind of good stuff. Use the promo code War Eagle. You get 20% off War Eagle promo code. And then they also offer some discounts if you find cheaper tickets after you buy from GameTime.co. They refund you like 110% of the difference there and stuff. So go look into that. GameTime.co, sponsor of the show and On3, and appreciate both of those people being a part of it, especially Session. Good friends there. And I got to get there this week. I haven't been much. The last couple of months have been a little bit busy, and I just haven't had a lot of time to do it. But I'm going to make that a priority. I'm going to make that a priority, JHead. You know what I mean? It's got to be a priority to get to the bar every now and then. The way it's going.
I hear you on that, man.
All right, let's talk some basketball. Auburn is 14-2.
Yes.
3-0 in the league. Sit atop the SEC standings with Alabama, who's also 3-0 in the league. They just continue to sort of do their thing. 9 straight wins, all by double digits. None by more than 11 was the closest they've been against Texas A&M. It's the closest margin of victory in this 9-game winning streak. All the computers continue to look at Auburn really, really strongly. They're 4th in KenPom, 5 in T-Rank, 8 in the net. Auburn moved up to 13th in the AP poll. Thought maybe they'd squeak to the top 10, but no big deal. Still a lot of time. Polls really don't matter. They're just historical. They're good to be ranked, and for historical purposes, but they don't necessarily matter in terms of seeding. But it's nice to get some recognition. They're finally ranked by everybody. Last week there was three or four pollsters who didn't even rank them because they're idiots, and so those guys now ranked Auburn, which is good. The one clown in Southern California still ranked him 23rd because he, I don't know, because he's not taking things seriously apparently. But Auburn just continues to everybody. There's just so much balance with this team. There's some guys you can count on for sure, but every game there's some guys that you can count on. There's some guys that need to play well. But every game it's kind of different. It could be KD, it could be Chad Baker, it could be Trey Donaldson, it could be Aiden, it could be, it could be Denver. It could just sort of be any number of guys. Dylan. It could be any number of guys doing any number of different things. You know what I mean? Dylan might pop off for 8 points, which is a big game for him. Or he might have 5 blocks, or he might have – it's just everybody kind of does something different every game, and it makes it really tough. The story of this team, I think, so far is the bench. Looking into the bench stats after this sort of run Auburn's on, they're first nationally in bench points per 40 minutes. Their bench is scoring 38 points a game per 40 minutes, which is first in the country.
Yes.
So their bench is unbelievable. Defensively, they're fantastic. My man Justin Ferguson looked up the stat that the second group is turning their opponent over 1 out of 4 times. The second group. That's an insane stat for turnover rate. And it's the second group doing that. And then Evan Maya, who is an analytics site as well that we check out every now and then. You can go in there and kind of look at different lineups and most efficient lineups. And here's a stat that's wild per Evan Maya. The most efficient lineup with a minimum of 75 possessions this year, the most efficient lineup in college basketball is a lineup from Auburn that features 0 starters.
Yeah.
The most efficient lineup in college basketball with a minimum of 75 possessions per Evan Maya is a lineup of Trey Donaldson, Chad Baker-Mazzara, KD Johnson, Dylan Cardwell, and Chaney Johnson. Not a one starts. An entire bench lineup that has been the most efficient lineup, period, in college basketball, ahead of starting lineups, ahead of anything else you want to see. That's the story of this team when you talk about Bruce Pearl saying, I don't know how, we don't drop off. That's a good thing or a bad thing, right? Either that means my starters aren't very good or that means my backup. It's and he's right. It's somewhere in between. There's no superstars on this team. There's just a bunch of really good players. More good players than most teams have when you're talking about 9 and 10 deep. And it's been the catalyst and it's been the difference so far.
I couldn't agree with you more. Just consistency all the way through. I mean, the way this team plays and the depth that it features, it kind of reminds you of one of those Nolan Richardson Arkansas teams. Now, you don't have the star power that Nolan had back in the early 90s with Scotty Thurman and Corliss Williamson and those guys.
Conde.
Yeah. But you've got some really, really good college basketball players that have played a lot of basketball. I mean, I think you've seen this trend recently that the best basketball teams in the NCAA tournament are the older ones, the guys that they featured a lot of guys that have played a lot of high-level basketball. You've got KD Johnson, who's a 4-year player in the SEC that really knows how to play. Jalen Williams, a 5-year player in the SEC, really knows how to play. Janai Broome. And then you're getting contributions from your bench, like you talked about, from Chad Baker-Mazzara, who is potentially the most difficult mismatch or the most difficult matchup for anybody on Auburn's basketball. Him and Jalen are probably the 2 hardest guards, the 2 toughest covers, in my honest opinion, with the way they can play with their length and athleticism. And then you're just getting really good point guard production. I mean, I think against LSU, you got 23 points and 6+ assists out of your point guard position. You'll take that night in and night out. The consistency with which Trey and Aiden continue to play and pick one another up. When one of them tends to have an off night, the other one seems to find it. Sometimes they're both on. Other times it's, it's Aiden or Trey. So really, like you talked about, this is a team that just uses its depth to grind you out. And eventually you get to the point where, that first wave, you're kind of playing with Auburn, and the second wave comes in and you're bringing in your second wave, and it's not quite meshing. And Auburn gets a 10-point lead by halftime. And then they just continue to grind away on you in the second half. And before you know it, you're down 20+ points. And we'll talk about the LSU game more. I mean, I think we obviously let up a little bit in that game, and that's something that Bruce will probably talk to them about as they go into Vanderbilt and then get Ole Miss at home this week. But just really 2 very good games, played 2 very different ways. And that's the hallmark of any good team, is finding a way to win in different ways and having other players that can step up.
Yeah. I mean, you look across the board at the stats of this team, and there's very little that they don't do well right now. I mean, if you were trying to be picky, they still foul at a decent rate. Their player fouls per 40 minutes is about 18, which is 257th in the country. But that's really it. I mean, there's just so much that they do well. I mean, you could just name a random stat. I'm looking at it, and the site I'm looking at is like stats that you do well in is green, stats that you don't do well is red, and it's just littered with green. in what they've done so well so far. Yeah, I was going to ask you about the LSU game. Obviously, you beat Texas A&M by 11. I think that was an important win just because of Texas A&M's recent history with Buzz Williams and Bruce Pearl. It's just a scheme and a matchup thing that is tough for Auburn, and so that was a good win. Texas A&M's good, by the way. Turned around and beat Kentucky. Like A&M's not going anywhere. That team's still really good, and so that was A&M could still turn it on and win the league. Like they're good enough to do that. So that's going to end up being a really good win, period. But it's also just a good win because it's sort of a nemesis type deal. And then LSU's playing well. I was impressed with LSU. They're probably they need a few more weapons, but I saw some progress from them. Like I think if they get some more weapons, they're not bad. They had some good moments. Auburn just jumped out to that 28-point lead because of the bench and the energy, and they just got rolling, which is what this Auburn team can do. The waves that they go when you get the second group in there and the energy and the first group, when they start feeding off each other, and they can go through a little 5, 6, 7 minute span where good luck. And they rolled up to a 28-point lead over LSU, which is crazy. Now, the disappointing part is how does this Auburn team – how do you allow a 21-2 run at home with the opponent? That's unacceptable. And I don't know, it's not like a red flag, but that shouldn't happen. That just shouldn't happen. It was weird. It kept going. Bruce didn't call his timeouts. He had his reasons, but that was the one negative probably from the week is giving up that lead and allowing an opponent to go on a 21-2 run in your own gym. That just doesn't happen inside Neville. So, but other than that, they righted the ship, won the game, still covered, won by 15. I think, they got Vanderbilt coming up.
Yep.
Tough place to play. Got to win it because I'm telling you, after this, it's going to be a massive step up. Like after this, it's a run of Ole Miss and Bama and Mississippi State and Bama again and Florida, and it just gets real after Vanderbilt. What's been the most surprising thing? I mean, we talk about the bench. Aiden and Trey are playing well. Dylan looks like – I looked up his stats the last 2 games last week. Dylan played 30 total minutes. So that's maybe a few minutes more than like what a starter might play in a game, right? 30 minutes. His numbers in those 2 games in 30 minutes were 11 points, 11 rebounds, 5 blocks, 4 assists, like 2 steals. You think about like that just over a normal game, and Dylan's playing well. What do you sort of make? Was there anything this last week, these last 2 games? They look good. They won. Anything alarming? You like what you see? What's the best thing, worst thing you saw?
Best thing is they were able to win in different ways. And I think I've said that on this podcast multiple times over, and it gets probably old and people think I'm kind of recycling material here, but it's honestly true. To be able to win in a rock fight against Texas A&M, a physical team that leads the league in offensive rebounding, the way Buzz plays, that unique style that he has, that really kind of bothers a Bruce Pearl team. But from a psychological standpoint, to get that one for Bruce, it was great. And look, I'm going to be honest with you. I truly enjoyed Buzz's comments after the game. Hats off to him for the way he some of his comments and the way he talked about Neville Arena. And then to go into a game against Ole Miss and shoot it at an extremely high clip and be very efficient on the offensive side of the ball. That to me, like I said, it shows the hallmark of a team that when things aren't working, you can still find a way to win. And when things are working, you look lights out. Now, you just talked about it. That is the one negative, that you gave up a 21-2 run in your home arena. I think that comes from a team that's still maturing and getting better. You're having to learn to play through. When you get a 28-point lead, it's really hard to stay focused, and it's very hard to keep your foot on somebody's throat. And this team's going to have to learn to have that killer instinct. And that's where Bruce, I think that's why he didn't call his timeouts. I honestly believe he wants this team to struggle. He wants to be able to go into this week and put that up on tape and say, look what happened here. You let a team that you had by 28 points go on a 21-2 run. That's unacceptable. And it's right here on tape. And they did it in your arena. That's his way of getting their attention. We talked about how Bruce is an elite button pusher. That absolutely is going to be one of those things he's going to talk to this team about this week. bank on it. And he's going to talk about the struggles they've had going into Vanderbilt as well. I mean, that is not an easy place to play. I don't know why, but it just isn't. I don't know if it's the setup of the court, if what it is, if it's Jerry Stackhouse's style. I'm not exactly sure, but Vanderbilt has been a tough place for Auburn to play. He'll have their attention going into that game. And you're right, that's going to kill you if you don't win that game. And then you talk about the competition level. There's not a team ranked outside of the top 100 in the net in the next 8 games that Auburn plays. That's how difficult their schedule is moving forward. I mean, that's insane, Justin.
Yeah.
That shows you the depth of the league of what you're walking into. Now, obviously, there's going to be some separation because there's going to be some teams that are going to win and they're going to lose, and they're going to start to fluctuate in the net poll somewhat. But I think 3 games into an SEC season and on the 8-game stretch you're about to go on where everybody's in the top 100 of the net, that's a competitive league. And you're playing some really good coaches. Chris Beard is a fantastic coach. Obviously, I think the world of John Calipari, Rick Barnes, everybody else that you've got on your schedule there. Nate Oates is a good coach. I know Auburn fans may not want to hear that. He's a good basketball coach. I might not necessarily agree with everything that he says or does, but we're talking about what he is as a basketball coach in this conference, and he's a good basketball coach.
Yeah, he is. Auburn, Alabama sit at the top. Bruce mentioned that in the media this week. Said he thought that what Auburn and Alabama have done recently in SEC haven't gotten enough of attention, and it is pretty crazy that we are currently on a 4 of the last 6 regular season titles in SEC basketball, Auburn or Alabama. Yeah. I mean, it's not long ago at all that if you said that out loud, put you in an insane asylum. Like you're crazy if you would have even. Yeah, I mean, I remember Auburn. I remember in the Barbie era. I have to look up the year, but there was remember the game that was like Auburn won like 45-40. Just something just so. It was like one of the worst games I've ever seen. I mean, it was the inability for either team to score was mind blowing.
Yes.
How far we've come with those 2 teams, and what they've done. But you mentioned the schedule. Here's what Auburn's got. And this is why I'm kind of there's a lot of good that we're seeing from Auburn. Ton of good, right? Mm-hmm. Love the balance, love the unselfishness, like the attitude. I think the more success that they have with this sort of platoon mentality, the better. I think that guys coming off the bench start to embrace it. Like if these games, let's say they would have lost a couple of these games.
Right.
Well, then coming off the bench isn't really fun anymore. It's like it's hard to take pride in coming off the bench and being an energy guy if you lose. You're like, well, this sucks. You're winning and you feel like you're part of something bigger. So like, all right, I'll come off the bench, man, because look at what I'm a part of, maybe winning a championship. So winning these games and the success, it's sort of helping hammer home to KD, to Trey, to Chad Baker. Hey, you're as much a part of this as the starters. It's like it's equal parts here. So I love the success they're having. I think guys are like buying into. We talked to Trey today in the media, and he's just like, just his words talking about the bench and sort of their mentality. You can tell now you're starting to see the wins. You look at the numbers, and now KD, Chad Baker, Trey, Dylan, those guys. They have a certain intensity coming off the bench. Those are intense guys, period. Yes. But you factor in now them taking pride in coming off the bench and like, all right, our turn. And if you're an opponent, man, and this second group comes in the first half or whenever they do, and then of course as the game goes on, it sort of starts getting mixed in. It's not as clear cut as first group, second group, but you do have a lot of those moments. But an opponent, and you're watching these guys come off the bench, Trey Donaldson and KD Johnson and Chad Baker and Dylan. And not only are these guys talented, but you're going, every one of those dudes has got an edge. It's got a chip on their shoulder, has got Dylan could start for a ton of teams. Trey could start. Chad Baker could start. KD could start. And so you're not just getting a second group, man. You're getting a talented second group that is just extremely intense. And for opponents, it's just going to continue. It's going to continue to be a problem where long way to go, but Auburn's in such good shape to win a ton of games. I think the games that are gonna give them trouble are the games where schematically it's just gonna be, whether it's Texas A&M, whether it's, when Kermit Davis was at Ole Miss, there was that. Like, it was always schematically there. He gave Bruce problems. He would max up. He would mix and match his defenses, and I think you're going to have to you have to come with something that's really unique and really causes Auburn some problems schematically, because if you don't have that, they're going to be tough. Just the way they're rotating guys in and out, the bounce they're showing, it's just sort of, it's just going to be tough. Vanderbilt's a little bit. They're going to slow you down a little bit.
Yeah.
Auburn's going to have to play good defense, sound defense for a lot of the shot clock. So it's going to be interesting to see sort of how this team maneuvers through these different schemes and stuff. But schedule is what I was talking about. After Vanderbilt, you go here. After Vanderbilt, Auburn plays Ole Miss at home, at Alabama, at Mississippi State. Then they get Vanderbilt again.
Mm-hmm.
They go to Ole Miss, Alabama at home, to Florida. That's 3 more. Then they get South Carolina at home, which is having a surprisingly good season so far, but they're not at home. That should be fine for Auburn. Then you got Kentucky at home, at Georgia, who just almost beat Tennessee there, at Tennessee, Mississippi State at home. So you've got a stretch now where you get Vanderbilt, and then you've got 3 brutal games. Then you got Vanderbilt. Then you got 3 more. Then you got South Carolina, and you got, I think, 4 more. And then you end with Missouri and Georgia. So like the next month plus 6 to 7 weeks is it's just, the grind is real. The grind is real, and we're going to learn a lot more about this team moving forward.
Agreed. And let me give you the ranking net of those teams you're going to play.
Yeah.
Ole Miss 56, Alabama 4, Mississippi State 35, Florida 49, South Carolina 54, Kentucky 18, Georgia 84, Tennessee 6, Missouri 119, who's the only team on there outside the top 100 other than Vanderbilt.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. That's the caliber of the teams you're going to be going up against in a deep SEC this year that's probably looking to put 7 or 8 teams in the tournament again this year. And you got to play every single one of those tournaments type teams.
Yeah, I was looking at, during this 9-game winning streak, A&M is I'm looking at T rank. I'm not sure about net T rank because it shows it. It's easy to see. They're 48th in T rank. A&M is. Other than that, USC was 73rd, Indiana's 87, LSU's 98. Basically, of the games we just talked about, every one of them is harder than almost any game in this current 9-game winning streak, other than A&M. So, like, the 9-game winning streak is impressive. They're beating teams. They're playing well, but everything moving forward is tougher than basically anything they've done during this streak. So it's just gonna shift. And people need to remember, like Bruce said it a couple weeks ago, they're gonna lose games. They're gonna lose games. They're gonna lose games. There's gonna be ups and downs. Like, so expect it. Again, I sort of continue to look at the maturity of the team. I think the talent and the balance is there. I just want to continue to see in some adverse situations, because they haven't had it. A&M was sort of close, but I guess it was 4 or 5 point game, but Auburn I think still had a comfort level. It wasn't tied with like 2 minutes left. They had a little bit of a cushion. LSU, they had a big lead, and even though LSU came back, they still were up by 10. And I don't think it ever got past 9. So there's still a comfort level there. We haven't seen Auburn in an absolute, like, every possession matters down the last 2 minutes. We haven't seen that except for Baylor and App State, and they lost them both. Yep. To be fair, it's the only 2 games that it's been that type of situation, and they lost both games. So that's probably the next step for me with this team is, I guess you just blow everybody out, but we know that's not going to happen. So it's when is the next time they're in a game that's that's 2 minutes left, they're down 1, and they got to win it. What does it look like? How do they react? Who's on the floor at the end? Those are the things. That's probably the one thing that we're missing from this team. Like, that's probably the one question about them I don't know how to answer, and I don't exactly know where they're at since the App State game.
I would agree with that, and I think there's a potential for that against Ole Miss. I don't know. I'm not in any way trying to disparage Ole Miss. I'm not quite sure how good that team really is. We'll find out when they come to Neville Arena. But when you go to Tuscaloosa, you're going to find out a lot about yourself. There's no question to me that Alabama is a very good basketball team, and they're playing really well right now. Mark Sears, fantastic point guard for them. And that, to me, is going to be your first test where you're probably going to be in a really contested game all the way down the stretch. And we know what it's like to go into Tuscaloosa and play. I mean, it's going to be loud. It's going to be heated. Guys are going to be, up for it. And I'm sure Nate Oates will have a really good scout on that game, and they'll be ready to play. And so, to me, what happens in that game, and that's 2 games removed from what we need to focus on, which is Vanderbilt and Ole Miss. But that, to me, is where you're really going to find out about this team and where they stand as far as what they're capable of doing potentially in the tournament and being a conference champion, because that's on the table right now. There's no question on that.
Yeah. Yep, I agree. You beat Vanderbilt, you're 4-0. Take care of business against Ole Miss, which will be really, right now A&M's a quad 2 game. Ole Miss is probably still a quad 2. I know Ole Miss is ranked now, but they're not nearly as high on the computers. They're like in the 50s or so. So that at home, that's still going to be a quad 2. So that's kind of the one thing eluding Auburn too, and probably in a few voters' minds have them sort of holding back a little bit with Auburn is they don't have a quad 1 win. Baylor would have been one. App State would have been one, because even though App State's not great, that's a true road game. And I think that would have been a quad 1. So they don't have a quad 1 yet. Their next chance will be Bama. Ole Miss would be a quad 2, which is still good. But they'll have that stretch we talked about where you go Bama, Mississippi State, Vanderbilt, and then you come back with Ole Miss, Bama, Florida. So that stretch right there of 6 games. So after Ole Miss, they play Bama, that'd be a quad 1. At Mississippi State, that's a quad 1. Ole Miss away would be a quad 1. Bama at home would be quad 1. Florida away, quad 1. So 5 after Ole Miss, 5 of the next 6 would be quad 1 win opportunities. Like monster stretch.
Yes.
Monster stretch. And I don't know. They're going to win some. They're going to lose some. I'm curious to see how they go, because this team's got a bunch of ability. I don't know if you're an Auburn fan, just embrace it a little bit. Like
sure.
embrace what's happening. If they lose some, man, just roll with it, because they're going to have to go through the fire a little bit. You're going to want them to do that. Just like App State sort of helped them maybe for Arkansas. Of course, Arkansas's got all kinds of problems, but you're going to want Auburn to just go through some stuff, man. If it's a loss, so be it. You don't want to lose games, but you need this team needs to go through some fire, because they've got a lot of ability to make a run in the tournament, but they're going to have to go through some of that adversity first. What are you looking forward to? So we got Vanderbilt on the road, Ole Miss at home in the next week before we meet again. I think the computers have got deciding favor against Vanderbilt. The T-Ranks got Auburn winning that game 82-64.
Mm-hmm.
They've got them beating Ole Miss 84-69. Now Vanderbilt slows it down a little bit. So if Auburn shoots well, they're going to beat Vanderbilt. If they don't, that game's going to be slow and it's going to be close. And you're going to be like, how is this such a close game? Ole Miss will be interesting because Chris Beard and that style, I feel like I don't know if he's got the horses to cause Auburn problems, but that sort of style, you think back to Chris Beard at Texas Tech and stuff, and that style could. And then, of course, the emotions of that with the Flanagans and Bruce and stuff will be really interesting as well. But what's sort of your take on Vanderbilt and Ole Miss these next 2 games? Do you see any red flags, anything that you're like, Auburn better watch out because this thing could sneak up? Or are these 2 more games that Auburn, if they stay focused, there shouldn't be any issues?
I think, to me, it's staying focused. That's exactly what you just said, because here's the thing. We do need to shoot the ball cleanly when we go into Vandy, because they do muddy things up. That's the way Jerry Stackhouse plays. There's they're a rough and tumble bunch. They made it ugly against Alabama, who's a very good basketball team. Mm-hmm. So you want to see Auburn play clean as they go into Nashville. And obviously I'm going to be intrigued to the matchup with the Lawrence kid, who obviously Auburn recruited this time last year, versus Chad Baker-Mazzara when they get matched up against each other. I kind of want to see that a little bit. So I'll be looking forward to that one. And then Ole Miss, like you talked about, they're a team that's ranked in the top 25. They're 56 in net. So that's why I'm saying I'm not exactly sure how good they truly are. but they've got some good pieces. I mean, the Morrell kid's a very good player. Obviously, Alan Flanagan is having a pretty good year. They've got Musa Cisse, who's a very good center that could be problematic for Auburn. So there's some pieces on that team. And I think they got a transfer from Georgetown, too, which is a kid that Auburn recruited from the transfer portal. He was initially out of LSU, went to Georgetown.
Murray.
Yeah. And
Brandon
then
Murray. And I got Jamarian Sharp, I think, leads the league in blocks, too, for them.
that's correct. So they've got some interesting pieces to that team. To me, it's more about who they've played at this point. They got a good win against Memphis, who I think Anthony Hardaway's put together a solid program there. So we'll see. But you get them in Neville, so I like that matchup for us. But it's staying focused, playing clean, making sure that you don't turn the ball over or underestimate someone. You want to see Auburn take everybody they play seriously. You don't want them to be looking forward to anybody or underestimating an opponent, because in this league, on any given night, you can get popped. Now, I don't think that's going to happen against Vanderbilt, but if you're not focused against Ole Miss, they've got enough on that team to win in Neville Arena. Do I think they're going to do it? No, but let's see how it all shakes out. Let's play up to expectation and do what you're capable of doing.
Yeah, I agree. It's gonna be a interesting week. Auburn's won 5 of the last 6 against Vanderbilt. Before that, they had lost. This is wild. Before the last 5 of 6 streak Auburn's got against Vanderbilt, they had lost 13 straight, and they had lost actually 17 of 18. So they had lost 17 of 18 to Vanderbilt, and then turned it around over the last 6. Of course, they lost last year, and their most recent trips to Vanderbilt have been tough. They lost last year. The trip before that, they won by 4.
Yes.
And then the trip before that, I think they won by 11, but it was close. I think it was the Final Four team that they won by 11, but it was a close game. So when Auburn's gone up there, and then before that, you got a bunch of losses. So there's not a time in any recent memory where they've gone up there and taken care of business and walked out with some kind of 15-point win. It just hasn't happened. Might happen Wednesday night, but it hasn't happened yet. And Vanderbilt, for all their struggles, had got into SEC play, lost to Bama by like 3, lost to LSU by like 8, and lost to Ole Miss by I think 11. But that game was pretty close at points too. So they also have like a 2-point loss at Memphis. Vanderbilt does. So Vanderbilt has shown that they're capable of hanging in there.
Yep.
We'll see how they handle themselves against Auburn, and then Ole Miss will be. I mean, just really weird seeing Al come back in a different jersey, seeing West come back. That'll be. I'm curious to see how Auburn fans react. I'm sure it's just, hey, you're the opponent. I'm sure Al will get booed some. That's just part of it. Not like he did anything wrong.
No,
that'll be a big one for Bruce. I'm gonna tell you, he is gonna want to win that one in a big way. As those guys come back. And so even some players on Auburn's team, obviously they know guys like Jalen and so Chris Moore, they were around Al for years. So that'll be really, really interesting to see that matchup. But Auburn's got a chance to go 2-0, got a chance to be 16-2 and 5-0, and then things get cranked up. But that would be an awesome start. You start 5-0, you've set yourself up well, and now the grind starts, and you've given yourself a little bit of a cushion because you're going to lose some games, and then everybody's going to lose some games. But I think you've built a good little cushion there to get going. So we'll see, man. It's going to be another fun week. Auburn basketball, make sure at auburnlive.com, check it all out. Still got football stuff going on, recruiting stuff, but basketball's heating up as well as this team tries to make a run for another SEC regular season championship. We'll see if they can do it. All right, JHead, let's get out of here, man.
Let's get out of here, Hoke. And guys, tune in next week, but looking forward to a solid week of SEC basketball. And like you said, stay plugged in for what Justin reports next. I'm sure we should have something on the coaching news here relatively soon. But let's celebrate Bruce on this podcast, what he's accomplished at Auburn, and hopefully we got 2 wins we can talk about next week.
Yeah. He's and by the way, I should have mentioned he's in second place now alone, passes Cliff Ellis for all-time wins as an Auburn basketball coach. He's at 187. He'll pass Joe Leaves next season. Joe Leaves is at 213. Obviously, you're not gonna rack up 26 more wins this year, but you'll pass it next year. No reason they won't. So next season sometime we should be celebrating Bruce Pearl as the all-time winningest basketball coach in Auburn history. And I think he'll do it in next year will be 11. I think he'll pass Eves in 3 full less seasons, something like that. Or maybe even more. I think Eves did it in 14 years, and next year will be 11. Bruce. So, well, really, that'd be 3+. It might be 3+ seasons less to pass it. So, put his name on the court. Just do it. Do it after the game. Just show up next home game with his name on the court. Just make it happen. All right, let's roll. Thanks to Session Cocktail. Appreciate them being a part of the show, as well as GameTime.co, all our good sponsors. We'll be back next week. Auburn basketball, trying to go 2-0. I think they're going to do it. All right, people. We'll see you at auburnlive.com. Bye.